Good day, ma'am. Good day, sir. I am your student from BSN 1D, Vanessa Joy B. Ramirez. And on this video, I will be doing a video demonstration regarding on simple and gram staining. But let us know first what is a staining. So, staining is a technique used to enhance contrast in samples, generally at the microscopic level. Also, the purpose of staining is to increase the contrast between the organisms and the background, so that they are more readily seen in the light microscope. First staining that I am going to perform is simple staining, wherein this is the most commonly technique used in staining, as it only uses single stain, the crystal violet. So, this technique is done when one wants to know the morphology and the arrangement of the bacteria in questions. Now, here are the materials needed for simple staining. A smear or a slide, a staining rack, a tray, a crystal violet reagent, the ionized water, a bibulous paper, then a acetone that we'll be using to clean the oil immersion lens after use. Of course, a microscope. So, since that we don't have a microscope here, let's just assume that we have a microscope. So, when having a laboratory test, it is important to wear a safety goggles and a lab gown. So let's just assume that my eyeglasses is the safety goggles that I am using. So we can now proceed on the procedure. So the first thing that we have to do is to place the fixed smear on the staining loop or rack. Next is we're gonna get the crystal violet and put some on the smear. So it is okay if the dropper touches the smear because it is already heated, wherein the germs are already killed. Then, after a few seconds, rinse the stain of the slide with the ionized water. Carefully. Next is using a bibulous paper, fold it once, twice, then blot the slide to dry. Remember to avoid rubbing on the smear to avoid removing the stained bacteria. Let us put aside this. Now, using a microscope, we can now start examining this with the use of an oil immersion lens. But since we do not have a microscope, let's just assume its result. Then, after getting the result, you can now start recording your observations. And that's all. So next is gram staining, wherein it is a common technique used to differentiate two large groups of bacteria based on their different cell wall constituents. The gram stain procedure distinguishes between gram-positive and gram-negative groups by coloring these cells red or violet. So here are the materials needed for this procedure. A smear slide, a staining rack, a tray, a bibulous paper, the ionized water, crystal violet reagent, bronze iodine reagent, ethanol, safranin, and of course a acetone to clean the oil immersion lens after use. Of course a microscope, but since we do not have a microscope, let's just assume that we have a microscope here. So we can now start with the procedure. So after heating the smear, put it on a loop or rack. And you will be needing 4 reagents when having a ground staining: a crystal violet, bronze iodine, ethanol, and safranin reagent. Now, start by getting a crystal violet reagent, then add several drops on the smear. Remember that it is okay to take the dropper and touch the slide. Then spread it around so that the area is completely covered. Then allow it to remain on the smear for 30 seconds. So after 30 seconds, using the deionized water, tilt the slide over the tray and start rinsing. Second reagent is bronze iodine. Now, add several drops. Then allow the bronze iodine to remain on the smear for 60 seconds. After 60 seconds, tilt the slide over the tray and start rinsing it using the ionized water. Third reagent is ethanol, which is the most critical step. Then start by taking a drop of ethanol then hold the slide above the tray, then add drops of ethanol, then allowing the drops to gently roll over the smear. Remember to do not add too much to avoid over decolorize. Then start rinsing it with the ionized water. Then lastly is the safranin. Add several drops of safranin on the smear. Then, allow it to remain on the slide for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, tilt the slide over the tray and start rinsing it with the ionized water. Then, you can now put the slide on the paper towel and gently dry it with Bibulous paper. Fold it once and twice and gently dry it. And now you are ready to examine it with the use of microscope. And always remember that after using a microscope, when using the oil immersion lens, clean it with a acetone. Since we do not have a microscope, let's just first assume the result of this staining. And after examining, you can now start recording your observations on the stains. So, that's all.